The betting pools had reached astronomical numbers by the time Cadet Kira Venn walked into the Grand Colosseum. I should know. I had wagered half my annual salary against her. My name is Throkval, Senior Combat Instructor at the Galactic Military Academy, and in my 300 cycles of teaching warfare to the galaxy's finest warriors, I had never seen anything quite as absurd as this moment. A human, a single, solitary human cadet, standing barely 5.5 feet tall, was about to face 10 of our Academy's champion fighters in sequential combat. The crowd was laughing. Not polite chuckling, mind you, but full-throated, belly-aching laughter that echoed off the stadium's curved walls. "Is this a joke?" Commander Zelthos bellowed from the viewing platform, his 4 eyes watering with amusement. "Did someone actually approve this?" "The human requested it," replied General Court, though even her usually stern face betrayed a smirk. "According to Academy regulations, any cadet may challenge the ranking champions if they believe they've been unfairly assessed." "Unfairly assessed?" I muttered, shaking my head. Kira Venn had scored in the bottom 10th percentile on every physical examination. Her bone density was laughable. Her muscle mass was pitiful compared to even our weakest species. She had no natural armor, no venom sacs, no telepathic abilities, nothing that would give her an edge in combat. And yet, here she stood. The human looked almost comically out of place in her standard-issue combat suit, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her brown eyes scanning the arena with an expression I couldn't quite read. Was it determination? Stupidity? A death wish? "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all classifications," the announcer's voice boomed through the arena. "Today we witness an unprecedented event. Cadet Kira Venn of Earth has invoked the right of proving. She will face our top 10 ranked champions in single combat. If she defeats them all, she will graduate with honors. If she fails," the announcer paused dramatically. "Well, let's just say the medical bay is standing by." More laughter rippled through the crowd of 5,000 spectators. The first champion stepped forward. Graxmol, a Chromath warrior standing 9 feet tall, covered in scales harder than starship hull plating. He had won 47 consecutive matches. His preferred method of combat was simple but effective. Grab the opponent, crush them, repeat if necessary. "This will be over in seconds," someone whispered behind me. I nodded. Seconds seemed generous. The starting horn blared. Graxmol charged forward with surprising speed for his massive frame, arms outstretched to trap the human in his crushing embrace. It was a move I had seen him use dozens of times, always with the same result: victory. Kira Venn stood perfectly still. The crowd's laughter died slightly. Was she frozen in fear? 3 feet away, 2 feet, 1 foot. Then the human moved. She dropped low, so low that her back nearly touched the ground, and Graxmol's massive arms closed on empty air above her. Before anyone could process what happened, Kira's legs swept out in a vicious arc, striking the back of the Chromath's knee joint, the only vulnerable spot in his otherwise impenetrable armor. Graxmol toppled forward with a surprised grunt. The human was already moving, rolling away and springing to her feet with fluid grace. But she wasn't done. As Graxmol pushed himself up confused and angry, Kira did something that made my blood run cold. She smiled. Then she attacked. Her movements were nothing like what we taught at the Academy. No formal stances, no predictable patterns. She flowed like water, striking at pressure points and joint connections with surgical precision. Each hit looked weak, pathetic even, but I noticed Graxmol was slowing down, his movements becoming sluggish. "What is she doing?" Zelthos demanded. "Targeting his nervous system," I replied slowly, my professional interest overtaking my disbelief. "Humans have something they call nerve clusters. She's disrupting his motor control." 30 seconds into the match, Graxmol collapsed, his legs refusing to support him despite his conscious efforts. The human had rendered him helpless without breaking a single scale. The arena fell silent. "Medical team to the floor," the announcer said, his voice lacking its earlier amusement. "Prepare Champion 2. Champion 2 was Silk 9, a Venethi warrior, whose species could see in 12 different spectrums and possessed reflexes 3 times faster than most galactic species. She was also a master of the plasma whip, a weapon that required split-second timing and incredible precision. Silk 9 entered the arena with confidence, her compound eyes tracking Kira's every micro-movement. She ignited her whip, and the blue plasma crackled menacingly in the air. "The human got lucky once," someone in the crowd muttered. "But Silk 9 won't make the same mistakes." The horn sounded. This time Kira moved first. She sprinted directly at Silk 9, which seemed suicidal given the whip's reach advantage. The Venethi warrior's whip lashed out, moving faster than most eyes could follow. Kira ducked under it. The whip came back, horizontal this time. Kira jumped over it. A third strike, aimed at her legs. Kira planted her hands and vaulted sideways, the plasma passing inches beneath her. "Impossible," Zelthos breathed. "No one's reflexes are that good." "She's not reacting to the whip," I said, leaning forward in my seat. "She's reading Silk 9's body language. She's predicting the attacks." It was true. The human wasn't watching the weapon. She was watching the wielder, seeing the tells in Silk 9's posture and movement that telegraphed each strike a fraction of a second before it happened. And she was getting closer. Silk 9 realized the danger too late. She tried to create distance, but Kira closed the gap in a burst of speed that seemed impossible from her earlier assessment scores. The human's hand shot out, grabbing the whip's handle, and then she did something that made the entire arena gasp. She held on. The plasma burned her hand. I could see the skin blistering even from my elevated position. But Kira didn't let go. Instead she yanked hard, pulling Silk 9 off balance and delivering a devastating strike to the warrior's thorax. The Venethi crumpled, her breathing apparatus damaged. Kira released the whip, cradling her burned hand against her chest. Medical teams rushed to both fighters. "She's injured," General Court observed. "She can't continue." But the human waved away the medics approaching her. She held up her burned hand, flexed it despite obvious pain, and nodded to the announcer. "I can keep going," Kira said, her voice carrying across the now deathly quiet arena. The betting pools had stopped accepting wagers. Everyone wanted to see what happened next. Champions 3, 4 and 5 came together, an unprecedented move but one allowed under the rules if the defending champions felt threatened. They were Marktor, a Grecian with 8 arms, Lix Prime, a crystalloid who could shift her molecular structure to deflect most attacks, and Voss, a Terillian psychic who could sense his opponent's intentions. 3 against 1, the human still injured, still small, still impossibly outmatched by every logical measure. The horn sounded. What happened next would be analyzed in tactical courses for decades. Kira didn't try to fight all 3 at once. She used the arena itself as a weapon, the pillars and obstacles forcing her opponents to attack in sequence rather than simultaneously. She targeted Voss first, knowing the psychic's abilities made him the most dangerous. But instead of attacking him physically, she did something brilliant. She lied to herself. I watched in fascination as Kira would think about attacking left, then strike right. She would broadcast fear while moving with confidence. She was creating false intentions, flooding Voss's psychic senses with contradictory information, until he couldn't tell prediction from reality. When Voss fell, confused and disoriented, she moved on to Maktor. The Grecian's 8 arms were formidable, but Kira had learned from Silk 9. She targeted his balance, staying close where his multiple limbs became a hindrance rather than an advantage, constantly moving, never letting him set his stance. Lix Prime was the hardest. The crystalloid's shifting form was nearly impossible to damage, absorbing and deflecting Kira's strikes. But the human noticed something I had missed in all my years teaching Lix Prime. The shifts weren't instantaneous. There was a microsecond of delay, a moment of vulnerability when Lix Prime was between states. Kira timed it perfectly, striking in that brief window, and Lix Prime shattered into her component crystals, stunned but alive. 5 champions down. The crowd wasn't laughing anymore. They were standing, pressed against the railings, utterly transfixed. Kira stood in the center of the arena, breathing hard, her burned hand now wrapped in a hasty bandage one of the medics had managed to apply during a brief pause. Sweat dripped down her face. Blood seeped from a dozen small cuts. Her combat suit was torn in 3 places, and she was still smiling. "Who's next?" she called out, her voice steady despite her obvious exhaustion. Champions 6 through 10 stood together at the arena entrance. Korseth, Vala, Rex Nim, Thorian, and Zek-Tul. The Academy's finest, warriors who had trained for decades, some for centuries. They looked at each other, then at the small human standing defiantly in the arena. "This is madness," Zelfo said, but his voice held something new. Not amusement. Respect. "Should we stop it?" General Court asked. "She's proven her point." "No," I said, surprising myself. "Let her finish." The final 5 champions entered the arena together. The final horn echoed through the Colosseum like a death knell, and I realized with uncomfortable clarity that I wasn't sure who it was tolling for anymore. Korseth led the formation, a tactical genius from the Valkyrie Empire whose species had conquered 17 star systems through pure strategic brilliance. Behind him moved Vala, whose toxic skin secretions could paralyze opponents with a single touch. Rex Nim, the towering Goliath whose punches could dent starship plating. Thorian, whose 4 wings gave him 3-dimensional combat superiority. And finally Zek-Tul, the silent assassin whose species could phase through solid matter for brief moments. 5 champions, 5 different fighting styles, 5 beings who should have been able to crush one exhausted human without breaking a sweat. Should have. The crowd had gone from laughing to silent to something else entirely. The atmosphere in the Colosseum had shifted into something electric, charged with possibility. I caught myself leaning forward in my seat, my claws gripping the armrest so hard they left gouges in the metal. Kira Venn stood alone in the center of the arena, and for the first time I truly looked at her. Not at her size, or her species, or her pathetic test scores. I looked at her eyes, and what I saw there made my spine ridges stand on end. She wasn't afraid. She was calculating. "Spread formation Delta," Korseth commanded, his voice carrying across the arena. The 5 champions moved with practiced precision, encircling the human from all sides. It was textbook tactical positioning, designed to eliminate any escape route and force the opponent to defend from multiple angles simultaneously. Kira didn't try to escape. She closed her eyes. "What is she doing?" someone shouted from the crowd. "Has she given up?" But I had spent 300 cycles studying combat, and I recognized a warrior entering a state of heightened focus when I saw one. The humans had a word for it, something I had read in their psychological profiles. They called it the zone. The 5 champions attacked as one. Kira's eyes snapped open, and she moved. What happened next defied every principle of physics I thought I understood. The human became a blur of motion, her body twisting and bending in ways that shouldn't have been anatomically possible. Thorian dove from above, talons extended, but Kira had already shifted her position, and the winged warrior crashed into the space where she had been a microsecond before. She used Thorian's momentum against him, grabbing his wing and swinging herself up onto his back. The champion tried to shake her off, but Kira had already located a nerve cluster at the base of his wing joint. She struck once, twice, and Thorian plummeted to the ground, his wings suddenly unresponsive. Rex Nin charged from the right, his massive fist swinging in an arc that would have pulverized the human's skull. Kira dropped from Thorian's falling form, rolling under the punch, but instead of retreating she moved toward the Goliath, staying inside his reach where his size became a liability. "She's using their advantages against them," General Court whispered, her tactical mind finally grasping what I had already begun to understand. Every strength has a corresponding weakness. Rex Nim tried to grab her, but Kira was already climbing him like he was a piece of terrain, using his own body as a shield against the other attackers. She reached his shoulder, and her injured hand, the one that had been burned by the plasma whip, shot out and pressed against a specific point on his thick neck. The giant warrior's eyes rolled back, and he collapsed like a falling mountain. "Vagal nerve stimulation," I muttered in amazement. She knocked him unconscious by triggering a vasovagal response. 3 champions down, 2 remaining. Vala moved in from the left, her toxic skin glistening with deadly secretions. One touch would be enough to paralyze the human for hours. But Kira had clearly studied every species at the academy. She grabbed a piece of torn fabric from her combat suit and wrapped it around her good hand, creating a barrier between her skin and Vala's poison. The Toxarian warrior lunged confident in her lethal advantage. Kira sidestepped, grabbed Vala's wrist through the fabric, and used the champion's own momentum to flip her onto her back. Before Vala could recover, Kira struck 3 precise points along her spine, each hit causing the Toxarian's muscles to spasm and lock up. 4 down. Only Korseth remained, and the tactical genius wasn't rushing in like his fallen comrades. He circled slowly, analyzing, calculating, searching for an opening in the human's defense. "Impressive," Korseth called out, his voice calm and measured. "You've studied us all, learned our weaknesses, but you're exhausted. Your hand is burned. You're bleeding from multiple wounds. How much longer can you continue?" Kira didn't respond verbally. She just adjusted her stance, favoring her injured side but keeping her eyes locked on the Velkari warrior. "You cannot win through endurance," Korseth continued, still circling. "I can see your breathing pattern. You're operating on adrenaline alone. When that fades, you'll collapse." "Maybe," Kira said finally, her voice hoarse. "But not before I finish this." Then she did something that made the entire arena gasp. She charged directly at Korseth, abandoning all pretense of defense. It was suicide. The Velkari was a master of counterattacks, and he had been waiting for exactly this kind of desperate move. Korseth's strikes came fast and precise, each one aimed at vital points. His fists blurred through the air, and I saw at least 3 land solid hits on the human's torso and legs. But Kira kept coming. She absorbed the punishment, her face twisted in pain but her eyes burning with determination. And then I realized what she was doing. She was trading damage for positioning. Every hit she took brought her closer, and each strike from Korseth required him to commit to a specific movement pattern. She was learning his rhythm. The 5th punch came at her face. This time Kira caught it. Her injured, burned, battered hand closed around Korseth's wrist with shocking strength. The tactical genius tried to pull away, but the human held firm. With her other hand, she struck his elbow joint from the inside, hyperextending it with a sickening crack. Korseth howled in pain and tried to sweep her legs. Kira jumped over the sweep and brought her knee up into his midsection, right where the Velkari digestive tract was most vulnerable. The champion doubled over, and Kira finished it with a strike to the base of his skull that sent him sprawling unconscious to the arena floor. Silence, absolute, deafening silence filled the Colosseum. 10 champions, 10 of the finest warriors in the galaxy, all defeated by a single human cadet who shouldn't have lasted 30 seconds against any one of them. Kira Venn stood alone in the center of the arena, surrounded by the fallen bodies of warriors who had seemed invincible just an hour ago. Her legs shook with exhaustion. Blood dripped from her wounds. Her burned hand hung at her side, the bandage soaked through with fluid from burst blisters, and then she fell to one knee, her body finally giving out. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor, surrounding both the human and the fallen champions. I found myself on my feet, though I didn't remember standing. Around me the entire stadium was rising, 5,000 beings of 100 different species, all staring in shock at what they had just witnessed. Someone started clapping, then another. Within seconds the entire Colosseum erupted in applause that shook the very foundations of the structure. Cheers, roars, whistles and sounds of approval from species whose vocal structures I couldn't even identify, all blending into a thunderous ovation that seemed to go on forever. General Court activated the main communication system, her voice cutting through the noise. By the authority vested in me as Academy Commander, I declared Cadet Kira Venn victorious. She has completed the rite of proving and will graduate with highest honors. The crowd's response somehow grew even louder. I made my way down to the arena floor, pushing through the crowd of officials and medical personnel. I needed to see her up close, to understand how this impossible thing had happened. Kira was being treated by 3 medics simultaneously, but her eyes were alert, scanning the crowd with that same calculating look I had noticed before. When she saw me approaching, she actually tried to stand at attention, though the medics pushed her back down. "Instructor Throckfowl," she said, recognizing me from her combat theory classes. "I hope my performance was satisfactory." Satisfactory. This human had just rewritten every combat doctrine we taught at the academy, and she called it satisfactory. "How?" I asked simply. "Your physical assessments were abysmal. Every metric suggested you were among the weakest cadets we've ever admitted. How did you defeat 10 champions?" Kira smiled, and despite her injuries, it was a smile of genuine amusement. "You measure strength wrong, sir. You test for physical power, speed, natural weapons. All the things humans don't have." "Then what do you have?" General Court asked, having joined us on the arena floor. "Adaptability," Kira replied. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters on Earth. We didn't have claws or venom or armor. We survived by being smarter, more creative, more stubborn than everything that wanted to eat us. We learned to turn every disadvantage into an advantage. Your champions were stronger, faster, better equipped, but they fought the way they always fought. I fought the way I needed to fight." She gestured to the fallen champions now being revived and treated around us. Graxmol relied on his strength, so I targeted his mobility. Silk 9 trusted her reflexes, so I attacked her breathing. Each champion had trained their whole lives to maximize their natural advantages. I've spent my whole life compensating for having none. "And the pain?" I asked, looking at her burned hand. "How did you continue fighting with such injuries?" Her smile faded slightly. "Humans have a high pain tolerance, sir. We evolved to keep running even when injured. Back on Earth, our ancestors would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Pain was just information. It told us we were hurt, but it didn't stop us from moving forward." Zelthos approached, his earlier amusement completely gone. "I wagered against you, Cadet. A substantial amount." "I know, sir," Kira replied. "Most of the academy did. I saw the betting pools." "Why didn't that discourage you?" "Because it proved my point," she said. "Everyone underestimate what humans can do. That's our greatest weapon. When people don't think you're a threat, they don't prepare properly, they don't take you seriously until it's too late." I thought about the laughter that had filled the arena just hours ago. The mockery. The certainty that this small human would be crushed in seconds. We had all been so confident in our assumptions. "You planned this," General Court said slowly. "You deliberately performed poorly on the assessments to lower expectations." Kara's smile returned. "I performed according to the tests you designed, General. Tests that measured raw physical ability, but combat isn't just about being strong or fast. It's about strategy, adaptation, willpower. All things that don't show up on a physical assessment. You manipulated us," Zelthos said, though his tone held more admiration than anger. "I used the tools available to me," Kira corrected, "just like I did in the arena. I studied every champion, learned their patterns, identified their weaknesses, then I created a situation where my weaknesses became irrelevant and their strengths became liabilities." One of the medics finished bandaging her hand and cleared her to stand. Kira rose carefully, and despite everything she had been through, she stood straight and proud. "So what happens now?" she asked, looking between the 3 senior officers. General Court exchanged glances with Zelthos and myself, then turned back to the human. "Now, Cadet Venn, you graduate with honors, as promised. But more than that, you've just revolutionized how we think about combat training. We've been focusing on enhancing natural abilities when we should have been teaching adaptation and strategy. With your permission," I added, "I'd like to study your techniques. Incorporate them into our standard curriculum. If one human can achieve what you did today, imagine what an entire military force could accomplish using similar principles." Kira nodded slowly. "I'd be honored, sir. But there's one condition." "Name it," General Court said. "Stop judging species by their physical characteristics alone." Humans aren't the only ones who get overlooked because they don't fit traditional warrior profiles. Maybe there are other cadets out there who could be exceptional if given the right opportunities. The general considered this, then extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. Kira shook it firmly, sealing the arrangement. As I watched the human cadet limp away surrounded by medics and newly earned respect, I thought about the betting pool I had lost. Half my annual salary, gone in a single afternoon. But I had gained something far more valuable. A lesson in humility, a reminder that the galaxy was full of surprises, and proof that the most dangerous opponent is the one you underestimate. The crowds were still cheering as we left the arena. The story of the human who defeated 10 champions would spread across the galaxy within days. Some would call it luck, others would call it a fluke, but I knew better. I had witnessed the birth of a legend, and more importantly, the beginning of a new era in galactic military doctrine. An era where strength wasn't just measured in claws and venom and armor, but in creativity, determination, and the stubborn refusal to accept defeat. An era where humanity would show the galaxy what it truly meant to be a warrior. And somewhere, in the back of my mind, I felt a chill of anticipation mixed with dread. If one human cadet could do this, what would happen when Earth sent its actual soldiers to the stars? The galaxy was about to find out.